Basically, that was the time video. It was a video that was organized, developed by students, and it was part of a whole school reform process. So, as a principal, what I did was I came into a school that was low performing and had a lot of different issues, and we decided to get very innovative in terms of the way we wanted to make change. And my experience speaks to an issue that is very relevant to principals of urban school districts. So one of the things that is a problem of a problem statement in my research was the crisis in American urban education underscores the need for talented principals. But the problem that I found is that in many urban school areas, we are losing principals. And one of the reasons why we're losing principals is because of some of, I think, the unintended outcome of No Child Left Behind, the Common Core, and now Every Student Succeeds Act, is that there's a greater public scrutiny and internal pressure on principals in urban school districts, specifically principals of low-performing schools. And it's interesting because principals of low-performing schools usually step into that role as change agents, whether they want to be that or not. Because most principals of schools that are urban, they are dealing with schools that have issues. And the principal is mandated to come in and make the change. And so even with my discussion with my colleagues across the country, there's a great pressure. You know, we already know that public education in America is under scrutiny, and there's a need for reform. But when you look at it from the perspective of inner city schools, those principals have to meet the same standards, usually being further behind in terms of their colleagues. So as a result of this, principals are leaving the urban school principalship at a rapid rate. That's what my research found. So there's a need for qualitative research and a need for models for effective school improvement. So I introduced to you the QMS study, which examines leadership practices and strategies at a low-performing Queens, New York middle school that led to improved school reputation and student academic outcomes. So what was the condition of QMS? That's what we're going to look at. So this school, and I'm going to give you the context in a minute, it went from second to last in the district to #1 in English language arts and mathematics in a 2-year period. What I want to say about that is I just want to address my positionality in the study. So I'm the former principal of the school, right? I haven't been principal at school for 13 years, and at the time that I did the research, it was 12 years from the time that I led the change at that school. So to make sure that I didn't have any, or to address any potential bias, I had to look at other data to substantiate that the improvement took place. So we looked at New York State Education Department data on the school, New York City School Report Card. We looked at internal memos, and we were able to establish that the school not just improved in terms of academics, in terms of reading and math, but it also the school climate improved. So all the information about the school improvement was asserted through data that wasn't from me, but from outside sources. Now, the purpose of this study is to help principals in urban school and impoverished districts to narrow the achievement gap between their students and students of more affluent districts and pinpoint what works from the perspective of students, teachers, and parents. So I had some assumptions about why the school changed, which I'll explain to you in a minute. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to understand the parents, the teachers, and the students. What were their perspectives of what happened at that school and why the improvement occurred? And in doing that, we set up 3 focus groups. Each focus group had 4 participants. And I went through random sampling and purposeful sampling because I wanted to look at purposeful sampling because I needed to understand the perspective of the people who were there at the time that the changes occurred. And then random sampling, obviously, because I wanted to eliminate any bias. With the focus groups, the process that I did was I did coping. and I did both open coding and query coding. I did open coding because I just wanted to find out what themes came after looking at the transcripts, but I did query coding because I had some assumptions and I had some research questions, and I wanted to see what those assumptions and research questions addressed in terms of the participants' responses. So we're going to go to the research question. So the research questions that I used to look at why the school improved was, one, what role did the principal play in transforming the school environment? What did the stakeholders, students, teachers, and parents view as best practices that effectively help students to improve academically and socially? And three, what attitudes and practices existed during the implementation of reform at the Queens Middle School? So context. So this was a large, low-performing urban school district located in a working-class, low-income neighborhood in New York. And as you can see, the student population during the time of the study, we had about 1,463 students. 49% of them were African American, 26% were Asian but Guyanese, 22% were Latino, 2% white, and 1 American Indian. The school had low test scores, low teacher morale, and when I say low, not just low teacher morale, but also low teacher expectation of what the students were able to do. We also had lack of community confidence, and it was an unsafe and disorderly environment. So everything in terms of urban life, gangs, the bullying, and incidents. And I'll give you an example of that. If you look at this, in 2001, you had 8 weapons possessions, 32 incidents of intimidation, 4 incidents of robbery, 4 incidents of criminal mischief, 2 of sexual contact. So we had a total of 50 major criminal incidents at that school in 2001. But as you can see, the school did improve. So look now, in a 2-year period, 2002, we're down to 5 weapons possessions. And you can just see the chart that the major incidents went down from 50 to 13 to 4. And you can look at each one of those categories and see that the environment of the school was improving. So we're going to look at this change through the lens of transformational leadership. And what I want to say is that when I thought that was a great lens or theory to look at change, especially from the perspective of making change in a public school in an urban setting. But there were other forms of leadership that were also implemented. So when I looked at transformational leadership, I couldn't look at it without looking at also transactional leadership. And transactional leadership is when you manage by expectations or systems of rewards and punishment. And then there's another one called laissez-faire, where you kind of let the followers do what they want to do. And really, none of these forms of leadership are wrong. They just, I think you have to look at it within the situational context. Let's see. So, transformational leadership, however, was a lens that I thought was the best lens to look at it in an urban school context, and I'm going to tell you why. In New York City, in particular, we have unions, okay? And so there's the collective agreement, there's certain transactional principles that serve as a foundation that can be a foundation for a transformational approach. And when you have parents, PTA, you have various unions, you have politicians and district leaders in an urban school setting, transformational leadership is, in my opinion, the best approach to bringing all the stakeholders together around change. So what is transformational leadership? We know that transformational leadership, it raises followers' level of consciousness about the importance and value of specific and idealized goals. It gets followers to transcend their own self-interest. Think about that. And actually gets them to actually rise above what they even believe that was possible for them to actually achieve. And it moves followers to address higher level needs of their higher level needs. So this model is a perfect example. Inspirational motivation is what a transformational leader does. They inspire people to change. intellectual stimulation, meaning that they create an environment where dissent is encouraged. They encourage other people to challenge them. And that's very scary for a leader. And also, idealized influence. Matter of fact, in my research, I found that the transformational leadership is most committed to the ideals and the vision of the organization, even to the point of self-sacrifice. An individual consideration. A transformational leader has concern for each individual within the organization. So I kind of compare it to, or use the analogy of a coach. A coach is concerned about the team in sports, but a coach is also concerned about each individual player. The coach doesn't just make up plays, but it looks at the specific play and say, you have this talent, and if you shift this way and do that, then you'll be able to achieve or maximize your potential on the field. And that's what a transformational leader does. We also looked at it from the perspective of educational change theory, Michael Fullen, and this addresses school culture. In my research, I found that when I did my lit review, that all the experts said that if you're a change agent within an urban school setting and you fail to recognize the importance of school culture, then you do so at your own peril. So Michael Fullen had this thing called, he had a model called, I think it was EMCA2, efficacy, motivation, capacity, and assistance times accountability. So he said that when you look at making change in a school situation, you have to look at efficacy, the belief systems of the people in the organization, how motivated are they to change, what is the capacity for change, and how are you assisting them, but at the same time holding them accountable. He also talks about the inside story, the inside-outside story, and the outside story, and says that you should look at change from this particular framework, not one, but all three. So the inside story is your school culture. It is what you, as a school leader, this is what you are in control of. The inside-outside story is how outside influences affect what happens within your organization. Things that happen around you that you may not have control over, but they inevitably impact your work. And then lastly, the outside story is how does your school culture or your school environment develop partnerships and relationships that expand outside of the school to have a greater impact on